Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome back. You ever catch yourself mid-thought, landing on an opinion, and then pausing, being like, where did that idea even come from? Or picture yourself halfway through a decision, about to click, respond, commit to something, and maybe something feels off. Wait a second, that wasn't me. That was a reflex, a script, a moment of mental malware running in the background. And the craziest part, it feels just like me. This is going to be what we're chatting about today. It's going to be about programming. And something that I've spent a lot of time on is feeling like, hey, this decision is all me, almost making a move, having everything lined up, urgency, identity, and then the shame comes in and you go, this is the move. But today's episode isn't really about making decisions or not making decisions. It's not about conspiracies or non-conspiracies. It's about having clarity when you do make a decision. So let's break the code and run a little virus scan on your brain. What I mean by this is kind of like mental malware, what programming really can be and is. Programming is kind of like the silent software update that you didn't consent to. So think of your software applications on a computer. Humans also have the same sort of thing running in the background. It's obviously a little different than an algorithm, but it's definitely something that can help or hurt and rewire what you want, how you act, and maybe even help frame who you think you are. It also hides in the feeds and the algorithms and the trends and in the micro emotions that feel like our own thoughts, but they aren't, and it isn't. This isn't random. It's actually very well studied. People have built entire careers understanding exactly how to shape behavior, attention, and belief. There's decades of work on this, and people like Robert Cialdini, who I've read quite a bit of, have built a career studying influence and how that actually works. Both his books Presale and Influence are definitely worth checking out if you're open to that kind of thing. And then definitely there are people who also study how to influence you for a living. And we can call that marketing, we can call that psychology, we can call that sales, but there's a lot of people attacking the same problem. There's also a ton of people who don't realize that they're being influenced at all. Most of us are kind of in that second group. You're not really the customer anymore. You're kind of the product wrapped in a narrative, if you want to think about it that way. So when you look at this, there's a couple levers that we can map out, and this would be your kind of manipulation system. So I definitely want to chat about that. Once you see these, you can't really unsee them. So a couple of these just quickly. Repetition, over and over again, forming a belief. So if you hear it enough, it starts to feel real. People start saying, the weather sucks, the weather sucks, the weather sucks, the weather sucks. You start to say, oh yeah, I agree with that. I guess I'm not really challenging that. And we hold these truths, and we don't really challenge them. We then have that accepted opinion kind of fill into our sort of worldview. So that's another thing. If you see a lot of repetition, you know that it might be a bit of programming, right? If you hear it enough, it starts to feel real. Another one that we see a lot of is social proof. So everyone is doing this. Everybody's buying Bitcoin. Everybody is building a side hustle. Everybody is getting up at 4 a.m. and doing a cold plunge, right? We've heard all of these kind of tropes, and it's another one just to kind of keep mind of, is everyone's doing it. As our parents would say, if all your friends jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? So that's kind of something to look out for as well. Social proofs are definitely one of the best ways programming is achieved throughout society. This can also be through reviews like on Google, follower counts, and testimonials. And the idea would be, if other people want it, maybe I should too. Another easy one to look at, and this is kind of the call to authority or one of the straw mans that you can throw out there, experts say. Credentials, logos, titles, subject matter experts. If they're credible, then I can trust them. 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this toothpaste. Well, I'm going to tell you, if I was a dentist, I certainly would be recommending toothpaste because I want to sell more products. And so my dental clinic, although we don't really sell toothpaste, it's a helpful addition to my industry. So a lot of what we see in society, especially with consumer products, if you have any experts saying, hey, this is a good thing or there's nothing wrong with this thing, all we need to look to is kind of the smoking coalition of doctors back in the 1950s and 1960s who were, going out and around and saying smoking is healthy. They even were giving cigarettes out to hospital patients to help them feel better. So, when you see that experts in the authority side, that's definitely an indicator that there might be some programming afoot. Not to say that this would be nefarious, but definitely just another time to take a step back and say, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know that a doctor would be recommending a medication. Are there any links to some sort of compensation or some sort of benefit that that person gets from recommending it? Not saying authorities are not to be trusted, but definitely look twice when you see an authority recommending a consumer product for sure, or an opinion for sure, or something to do. Another really great tool for kind of programming or forcing the urgency is scarcity. Only 3 left, only today, buy now, or the deal kind of goes away. Pressure does compress decision making, and so oftentimes what you'll see is if you have like kind of an end of month special, or if you have a deal, it might actually not expire. So that's something to think about. Is we kind of offer these pressure decision making scenarios like buy one get one free, or take advantage of that. The only reason we do this is so that we can sell more, right, on the sales side. So if you're looking at that and you're a consumer and you're thinking, oh, do I really need to buy this thing? Well, chances are that sale was never really a sale in the first place. It was just them lowering it to MSRP costs. So I've just lowered my costs and I've offered a sale to you so that I can get more business for this month. But that's not necessarily a deal whatsoever. So that's another way you can look at and see is if you're getting some sort of pressure to buy now. That would be another way I would be, okay, let's take a step back. I'm getting pressure to buy now. I'm not really sure I'm ready to do that. So another one, a little bit more subtle, is reciprocity. So you get free value out of something, you feel like you owe something back, right? If you get a product for free, you feel like you need to leave a review. If you are being passed by someone on the street who's giving out something, maybe you say, well, at least I should hear them out, right? And you don't actually have any obligation to do that. If somebody is giving you an offer, that's great, but you don't actually have to pick up on that when they're calling you. And this is something I deal with a lot in my sales job. Obviously, if I'm calling you and I have an offer for you, it's because I want you to do something, right? So if you're on the other side of that and you're thinking about that, anything that's kind of free, but you feel like you owe something back, it's not free, right? It does come with a consistent ask or obligation, right? If you hand out something free, I mean, this is one of the tenets of the 48 Laws of Power, but a lot of the people quoted in these books, they didn't want to be indebted to anybody. They didn't want to owe anybody a favor. So something to think about as well is if you're getting something for free and you feel obligated to make a donation or pay that person back, consider why that offer is being presented to you that way, right? So another thing I really like, and this is kind of a concept that it's really good to think about, is commitment and consistency. So getting somebody to commit to a smaller yes and turning that into a bigger yes, kind of stretching that commitment across. Oh, you said you wanted to do this, can be turned into, you said you wanted to do this by this day, can be turned into, you have to do this. So another way to look at it is if you've made a subtle commitment, let's say, for example, you're at the car dealership and they're really pushing this car on you, but you really want it, and you've told them, hey, I want this. After you leave the dealership, maybe you have a second thought and you say, hey, I don't know if I want it as much as I did. But then they call you and they say, hey, you said you wanted this. You said you wanted this car. We have it ready for you. You need to think about, I'm not obligated to make a purchase. Literally. It's my money. It's my decision. And so when you're getting that pressure saying, oh, well, you said this, you can instantly change your mind. You have that control there. So something to keep in mind a lot in the sales world. You'll run into this if you're buying anything. People will kind of put your words in your mouth and say, hey, this is what you said, right? And if you're a good salesman, your job is to identify people's needs and put a plan in front of them that meets that the best. So I don't necessarily think anyone who's doing their job is nefarious, but if you're buying something, definitely worth thinking about the different ways that you're being manipulated. And the same goes when you're forming an opinion. It all is the same. If you're forming an opinion or if you're reading something, consider why the source is sharing what they're sharing with you. Consider who is sharing it. Consider the timing and stuff like that, right? So, back to the sales side, people obviously do buy from people they like or feel similar to. So that's another lever that people pull is like liking equals relatability. Again, that's a little bit of a nicer one. Like if you like someone, you can obviously do business with them, you can form an opinion from them, but consider that when you accept any information from them. Hey, I like this person. I might be less critical of what they're sharing with me because I like them, because I find them to be attractive or to be compelling or to be magnetic. That's another one to just watch out for, which is kind of pretty self-evident. So I won't dive too much into that one. When you look at these levers in total, they aren't evil, like I said before. They're just very predictable. So one thing to just pay attention to is, again, when you're buying anything, when you're forming these opinions, you don't really see these programs running. But if you don't notice them, then they're kind of being run on you. So it's just something to think about when you're buying, when you're encountering, when you're scrolling Instagram and you see a reel and it's a political opinion, for example. You really question why it is that you're specifically seeing that, what you've liked in the past, or why someone would want to share that information with you. I think in today's day and age, that's one of the most important skills you can have, is identifying how did this information get to me and what can I do with it, right? So obviously, I'm not here to just talk about programming. I've obviously had moments too where I almost bought something, committed to something, leaned into something, and about 5 minutes later, it kind of fell off, right? So, when you're in these situations, and when I've been in these situations, it's not a strategic thing. It's your nervous system getting played, right? They're playing on any sort of anxieties or lack in your life or something like this, right? So the uncomfortable part for me was, I've been on the other side of that using similar levers. I've used urgency, I've used identity, I've framed things in ways that, made people lean in. And when it works too well, it almost feels like a science as opposed to an art. It feels like you kind of pull the lever. So that's for me why, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this is because I feel like a lot of people should be armed with the opposite side. Are folks in sales situations, or if you're buying something, what can you do to safeguard yourself, right? So if you're doing sales properly and if you're being sold to properly, you don't necessarily need to do programming. Most people think they're being sold to during the pitch, but you're actually being sold to a lot earlier in the chain, and that's where I think a more authentic approach is beneficial for everybody. If you're actually making a purchase, obviously you did your research. You went online, you looked at the website, you looked at the tone, the identity that the company or the product kind of frames you into, the emotion it creates by eliciting a purchase or by engaging with something. And then by the time the offer shows up, your brain is kind of leaning into, oh yeah, that's exactly what I want, right? So when you look at like a bad pitch versus a good pitch, a bad pitch, if you're being sold to or if you're kind of being manipulated or programmed, there's a lot of urgency, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of fake scarcity, there's a lot of identity pressure. These levers are pushed and pulled, again, for especially political leaning stuff, especially sales related stuff. Anything that you would see and interact with from the media often pushes on one of these levers, right? Especially if you look at like the news cycle or even mainstream media, these are well-known triggers that people can pull views. I want people to engage with my content. I want people to stay locked in to my channel. Obviously, I'm going to use these programs to elicit the kinds of responses that I want, the kind of engagement that I want, right? And we all know this on Instagram. We see these like rage-based accounts that are knowingly posting news that's going to rile up a group of people so that they end up getting riled up and they end up taking the exact behavior that the person who posted that is looking to engage. I think of a famous example where there were these Russian hackers who were able to organize a protest and a counter-protest across the street from each other. They were clearly using these levers to manipulate people. They were clearly creating urgency around a problem. They were creating fake scarcity around a problem. And they were creating identity pressure by making folks of one political leaning feel that they needed to go and do something. They did the same thing on the other side. So again, when you see it plainly like this, you can see how folks might be easily pulled in one direction or another. When you want to look at examples of a good pitch or a good sales process or a good opinion forming habit, you want to look for calmness and tranquility, clear thoughts and frame of mind, transparency, so happy to be wrong, showing their work, showing their study, showing where they got their data from, and then a respect of giving you space. you don't really want what you want what other people are seen wanting. If you think about it like that, a good sales pitch is kind of respectful of that. You kind of stay away, you give that person respect, you give them space, you're clear and concise, and you're not pushy, right? But when you don't really know what you want, and you want what other people are seen wanting, and we live in a digital world, that can scale violently, both on, like I said, the opinion forming side and on the products and purchasing and what I do with my time and my money, right? So there's another layer to this that a lot of people don't talk about or maybe don't think about, definitely not talking about it frequently. These systems really aren't just trying to sell you something, they're learning you, right? So when you click, when you pause on something, what you react to, what you don't react to, what you almost buy, all of that gets fed back into the system now. So it's not just influence anymore, it's personalized influence. We used to create value through what we did. Now a lot of that value comes through how we behave, and at the most basic level, capitalism fills these gaps. If you're bored, lonely, if you have any lack of direction, if you feel like you have a bit of a meek personality or people say that about you or that's what you've found, this algorithm doesn't just sell you things, it also sells you something to be, which is scary. So when something feels perfectly tailored to you, it might not be a coincidence, it's trained. And that's surveillance capitalism. Not watching you in the same dystopian way, but really just learning you enough to guide you. And the more you question it, the better it gets at shaping you, right? The more you don't question it, the better it gets at shaping you. I think of like a lot of folks, and I mean no offense in saying this, but a lot of folks who maybe shop at a certain brand and associate that brand with their identity. I think of this a lot when I was in high school and there was a particular brand, like say Abercrombie and Fitch or Hollister. I know those are dated terms, but folks had to wear that clothing. It was associated with the status, it was associated with being cool, and this was all the rage, right? By buying that clothing, you associate yourself with the identity of the people you want it to be. The problem for me was always that someone in a boardroom created that personality. Somebody on the other side of that picked that personality for you, and you went to the mall and you went and made some personal choices, or so you thought, and you ended up with a corporate personality. They picked it out for you. You just thought you made the choice, but it's an illusion of choice. A lot of these companies, especially the clothing ones, they're all owned by a central owner. Like a lot of these big fashion brands, they're rolled up to the same VC that owns everything, right? And so when they put out a new trend, or when they match your identity to a clothing or to a product, they have already thought about you as a consumer, and they have tailored this to you. So it's good to question it, right? If you're wearing someone else's brand, especially like on the front of your shirt or something like this, that is deliberate. And that's something that they know about it when they're trying to sell it to you. So just something to think about it. And if you're bored, that's when it can become predatory. If you feel like you don't have an identity, or if you feel lonely as a person, capitalism has already thought about you. So you see a lot of these places where folks end up, or kind of things people get into later in their life that are purely based on how much I can spend to get into a hobby. And that's another way capitalism kind of infects you, right? It says, oh, if you don't have anything to do, here's a list of things you can do with your money that we've already thought out for people just like you, right? So you can add a programming filter to spot these things in real time, in my opinion, and it's worth just thinking about this. A couple of things to think about, pause, question, and reclaim your timeline. Who profits if I believe this thing I believe? What emotional lever is being pulled when I encounter this information? Are they trying to make me scared? Are they trying to excite me? Are they trying to get me to hate somebody? All of these things are happening when I turn on my social media, right? Another thing, would I still agree with this if I was offline tomorrow, or if it was written on paper? Was I led here, or did I arrive here? The other day I caught myself sharing an opinion with someone that was almost verbatim in a reel I had seen about 10 minutes ago. If I hadn't caught myself in that moment, I would have just quoted something I saw as my own thought, right? And so when we engage with a lot of these 10-second videos, it does go into our brain somewhere. And when we share that idea with somebody, we might not be sharing it with full knowledge of where it came from. And if that's a parody account, or if that's an account from a Russian bot, then maybe we should think about that. Maybe we should be a little bit concerned that that's where we got our opinions from. So let's talk about deprogramming in real time. Obviously, there's a lot of ways to get got in today's society. There's a lot of defenses that you need to have, but you can do a bit of a mental reset here. You can catch the tension. You can see if anything makes you feel like you have a tight chest, or you can see the levers of urgency in play. I need to decide right now. Or a comparison spike is being made. Look at how that other person is doing. I need to have that. Run that filter. So when people run these filters and you're asking who profits, what lever is being pulled here, how did I get here? Inject the truth. What do I actually want? If you did this for a week and just watched how you react to things, where this came from, how did I get here, who profits, I guarantee you how you react to things will change a little bit. And if you give yourself a little bit of space here and reflect, then you might not be so susceptible to any of these algorithms, any of these programming methods. Now, I'm not saying you might be, but if you're looking to explore this, just pay attention. Noticing is a hell of a drug. You can really look at everything, and you can look at the last 5-10 reels you engaged with and really look at them. Where did they come from? Who made that account? Why did I share it? Why did that even show up on my algorithm? Because I guarantee you that's a data profile out there about you somewhere, and someone is using that information. Not nefariously, not trying to be a fearmonger, but also if algorithms are there, then they can be studied, manipulated, and encouraged one way or another to show you the right kind of information. So it's highly important to be cognizant of this in today's day and age, in my opinion. Another thing to think about is, if you've been listening to me, this isn't really new. It's the same system from a lot of the different angles I've been talking about, right? So like when I talked about being self-made, and in my podcast for an episode that was, self-made is a myth, there was a story there about how success should be. That's program, right? In my other episode about capitalism leaving you unfulfilled, the market is selling desire back to you. In the other episode I did about the internet breaking success, it shows you how success metrics aren't yours. So in another way, the medium is the message. It's not just what you're hearing, it's how and where you're hearing it, and that's kind of where the program lives. So the danger isn't really being lied to, it's being entertained into obedience, distracted into compliance, flooded with so much content that you forget what you believe. They don't really need to censor your thoughts, they just need to bury them and flood you with information left and right. And I think if anybody can point to anything that's happened over the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, it's the intensification of social media. Screen times are way up. Folks are chronically online, and never a better time to look at what we do with our time and how our attention is captured by these black box social medias, right? So a challenge for folks listening to this, if you're saying, okay, great, Jesse, I understand social media is bad, there are risks, there's an algorithm, it's tracking us, we understand that. You can reduce your mindless scrolling a little bit. Try and be a bit more mindful of when you're on social media. Always recommend a detox too. If you can take a week out or delete that thing off your phone and find another way to access it, that's my main recommendation. Try and reduce mindless scrolling. Try and reduce your autopilot purchases. And try and also minimize any sort of compulsive comparisons. I know it's difficult. We are comparative beings by nature, but something to think about for sure. If you could practice 30 minutes of input fasting, so no social media, no immediate inputs, just sitting there thinking your own thoughts, definitely recommend that. Journaling is also another thing that has really helped me stay away from these things. And then really asking yourself, if you learned anything that day, if you formed an opinion, where did this opinion come from? Seriously, how did that form? And kind of really pay attention to that. Audit yourself. What lever is being used? How am I being pushed and pulled? I think if you're in Canada and you go on social media, you can see that you're being flooded with a lot of information that might make a certain group of people look bad, that might make a certain group of people look like all of society's problems. If that's the case, and you run into this, as I have in the most recent days, ask yourself why, right? Why does my social media want me to hate this group of people? Why do they want me to love this group of people? Why at all is this important for someone to share with me? If you can ask that question critically, you might be able to uncover that there are maybe some not so nice reasons folks want Canadians to believe a certain thing, right? So that's definitely as far as I'll go on that topic, but want you to think about it definitely intently. We all get hit with this. It's the whole game. You scroll, you compare, you feel a little less than, you buy something, or you start chasing something. Then you realize, wait, I didn't even know I wanted that. It's not about being perfect. Just catch yourself once. Mid-scroll, mid-thought, mid-click, the moment where you pause and you think, did I actually think for myself there? That's where the real power is. And I know with ChatGPT and with algorithms today, it's really difficult to do that. But you don't need to go off grid. You don't need to burn it all down. You just need to stop running other people's code, okay? Because if you don't stop to question it, you're just running someone else's code. And that's where I'd like to leave it today. If you're not thinking for yourself and you're constantly getting bombarded with information and you're not stopping to wonder, how did I get all this and where did I get all this and why? Then you're running someone else's program and you're essentially someone else's NPC. So that's where I'd like to get people kind of up to speed today. In the world of programming, in the world of sales and media manipulation, it's probably the most poignant thing you can think about. So safeguard yourself, take a step back, really audit how you're learning things and where you're getting your information, and I guarantee it's going to improve your outlook. I guarantee it's going to make you feel more in control of who you are and the decisions that you're forming. Thanks again for taking the time to listen to me today. Would love to hear if you have any comments or concerns or anything in the section there. For me, I would love to see what people think about this kind of format as well, just because it's a little bit newer for me. Thanks again for listening. This has been another episode of Thinking Out Loud with Jesse. We'll see you again next time.